Ted Cruz, senator from the great state of Texas and author of a new book that comes out, I think, today, One Vote Away, How a Single Supreme Court Seat Can Change History. A great book where he explains how it already has and let you noodle on what it means for the future. Ted Cruz, how are you, sir?
Glenn, I'm doing terrific. How are you doing today?
I'm good. I want to get to your book here in a second. First, any thoughts about the debate?
Well, I think the debate, it ought to be interesting. I think there'll be some fireworks. My assumption is Biden will take a couple of shots at Trump, and I think Trump will take several shots at Biden. What I hope happens is that we see a real contrast of ideas and a contrast of visions. I think we win if we contrast free enterprise with socialism. I think we win if we contrast the rule of law and the Constitution and Bill of Rights with chaos and anarchy and riots in the street. I think Joe Biden wants to make it just a personality contest on whether or not you happen to like Donald J. Trump. They think they win that. I don't know if they do or not, but I know and I'm confident we win if we focus on the competing visions and what's better for America.
So in a related question, I'm worried about losing the presidency, but I am terrified of losing the presidency and the Senate. And there's a real chance of that.
The two are closely correlated. If you look at the Senate seats that Republicans are defending, they're in purple states. They're in states that are tough. And most of the outcomes, the presidency and the Senate go together. We either win both or we lose both. There's a couple of very narrow slices where you win one or the other, but in all likelihood, it's all good or all bad. And Glenn, if we wake up in January of 2021 with Joe Biden, Chuck Schumer, and Nancy Pelosi in charge, God help us.
God help us.
They will do more damage in 2 years than Obama did in 8.
I think the fundamental transformation of America is done at that point, unless we have the Supreme Court holding to not the Republican point of view. I don't want that. I want somebody who's holding to the Constitution. Will if Amy Coney Barrett is pass through and wins her nomination, is that enough on the Supreme Court to be able to hold this country together?
Well, I think she is a strong nominee. I think the decision to nominate Judge Barrett may well be the single most important decision President Trump has done in office. As you know, I've got a brand new book came out today called One Vote Away, How a Single Supreme Court Seat Can Change History. And the book, before I was in the Senate, I was a Supreme Court litigator. What I did for a living is argued cases in front of the U.S. Supreme Court. And what the book does is each chapter talks about a different constitutional liberty. So there's a chapter on free speech. There's a chapter on religious liberty. There's a chapter on the Second Amendment. There's a chapter on U.S. sovereignty. There's a chapter on democracy and elections, and it talks about Bush versus Gore. I was part of the legal team that represented George W. Bush, and the case went all the way to the Supreme Court in a contested election. We could easily see that this November. And what the book does is it really tells inside war stories of what's going on at the court. It takes you behind the curtain, who the justices are, what they're doing, and many of the landmark cases in each of these areas I litigated. And so I tell the behind the scenes, who the parties were, what was going on. And I'll tell you, it really is striking on issue after issue after issue. So many of the landmark cases are 5-4, meaning we're just one vote away. One more leftist judge is the difference between losing our rights to free speech, religious liberty, the Second Amendment, versus preserving and keeping those rights.
Well, we have John Roberts, who I think has been wrong on all of the big constitutional questions. I don't even know who he is anymore. I mean, he just seems like he's worried about PR or I don't know what. But go ahead.
It's painful and unfortunate, and I've known John Roberts 25 years. John was a former clerk to Chief Justice Rehnquist, as was I. And I got to say, what has happened to John in the last couple of years, and particularly this term, has been horrific. He has become Sandra Day O'Connor. And personally, I think it's driven by antipathy for Donald Trump. It is difficult to imagine two people more antithetical, more opposite than John Roberts and Donald Trump. And there are a whole series of decisions this term where John Roberts sided with the left on the court in a way that was really inconsistent with the Constitution, inconsistent with the laws. And one of the things I try to do in this book, One Vote Away, the last chapter is all on Supreme Court nominees and how to get it right. Yeah, and it traces the history of Supreme Court nominations going back to Dwight D. Eisenhower. And if you look at it, and you know this, Glenn, Democrats are nearly 100%. Virtually every Democratic nominee votes exactly as the Democrats would want in almost every case. Republicans are terrible at this. We don't even bat 500. And there's a clear pattern. There's a difference between when we get it right and when we get it wrong. If you look at those justices who stayed faithful to their oaths, who stayed faithful to the Constitution, Antonin Scalia, Clarence Thomas, Sam Alito, Chief Justice William Rehnquist, my former boss, every one of them had a long proven record as a conservative. They had stood up for the Constitution. They were constitutionalists, and this is the critical piece. They had been excoriated by the press. They had been pounded by the press, and they hadn't wavered. That's what produces results. That was what produces consistency. On the other hand, when Republicans have a stealth nominee, someone that doesn't have a record, someone that hasn't been criticized, 100% of the time they turn out to be a disaster.
All right, so does Barrett have that long record? Ted?
Sorry, go
does Barrett have that record?
I've lost the audio.
We lost the audio with Ted? Can you hear me, Ted?
Okay, you're coming back. Sorry, Glenn. The audio is fading in and out.
Okay, I'm sorry. I'm asking if Amy Coney Barrett has that record, that long record.
You know, I hope so. Her credentials are very, very strong. She was first in the class at Notre Dame Law School. She clerked for Justice Scalia. She's been a law professor at Notre Dame for 20 years. She has been one of the most respected appellate judges in the country for the past 3 years. She's also a mom of 7 kids, which is amazing. I can't even imagine doing that, much less doing that along with everything else she's done. And so I hope she proves a strong and consistent constitutionalist. My preference is always for a longer proven record, but I think everything we know about her is strong and encouraging.
Okay. You're in your book. You do break down gun rights, Chapter 3, religious liberty, school choice, abortion, free speech, crime, law, and order, and then democracy and the electoral process. All of those are about to be lost. All of those are about to be lost. How? Go ahead.
Go ahead. Every one of them is hanging in the balance. Let's start with free speech. One of the things I talk about in the book is the case Citizens United. Now, a lot of people have heard of Citizens United. The Democrats hate that decision. They attack it constantly. Most people don't actually know what Citizens United concerned. Citizens United was a nonprofit organization that made a movie critical of Hillary Clinton. And the Obama administration wanted to fine them for criticizing Hillary Clinton. And the question there was, can we, as citizens, criticize our politicians? At the oral argument, the Obama Justice Department, Justice Sam Alito asked the Obama DOJ, under your argument, could the federal government ban books? If it disagreed with the book, if it didn't want the book to criticize a politician, could it ban books? And the Obama DOJ said, yes, we could ban books. Now, fortunately, the Supreme Court rejected that radical proposition, but the vote was 5-4. There were 4 justices willing to take away our free speech rights, to make it, give the government the power to make it illegal to make movies, to make books, to criticize our politicians. That is, I think, a profound threat to our liberties.
In the book that Ted's just put out, One Vote Away, he talks about the electoral process, which, Ted, if the president, and there's a good shot he wins again without the popular vote, the Democrats are prepared with states just to say, we're delivering all of our votes for the Electoral College to the popular vote winner, which is not, that's not the way it works. Can they do that? And how do we hold on to the Electoral College, which I think is the most important thing for the balance of our country?
Well, I'm deeply concerned that we're headed for a period of chaos in the weeks after Election Day. I think by any measure, this could be a close election. And if it's close, Joe Biden has already made explicit that if he doesn't win, he intends to challenge the legitimacy of the election. Bush versus Gore, as you mentioned, there's an entire chapter talking about Bush versus Gore. The last time we had a significant contested presidential election in the courts. I was a young lawyer. I was on the George W. Bush campaign at the time. In fact, Heidi and I met on that campaign. We were at cubicles about 20 feet apart from each other on the campaign. I was down in Tallahassee the entire time of the recount. It was chaos. On election night, George W. Bush had won. The votes were counted. He won. He was declared president. And then the votes were close enough that Al Gore challenged it. And he filed a whole series of lawsuits all throughout Florida seeking to reverse the outcome of the election. And what he was seeking to do was throw out votes that were for George W. Bush and try to find new votes that were for him. And then that's what anyone in a recount, if you've lost, your incentive is keep counting and counting and counting till you can change the outcome. Well, it was utter chaos. I remember we had a war room with a whiteboard. We had 7 different cases all on the whiteboard, any one of which could flip the presidency of the United States. That case went to the U.S. Supreme Court twice. The first time we won unanimously, 9-0. The Supreme Court vacated the decision of the Florida Supreme Court, sent it back, said they got it wrong. The second time it went up to the court, we won 7-2 on the violation. So 7-2, the Supreme Court agreed what was happening in Florida violated the Equal Protection Clause of the Constitution. But critically, it was 5-4 on the remedy, on the outcome, where 5-4 the court ruled enough is enough. We've counted the votes. The votes have been counted 4 times. George W. Bush has won all 4 times. Under the law, the election is over. It's time to move on. That decision, we had 36 days of uncertainty, of chaos. The country and the world didn't know who the next president was going to be. I think we could see it much, much worse this year. Instead of just one state, Florida, I think Biden, if he loses, could challenge in 3, 4, 5 states simultaneously. We could see chaos. You know, there's this group I'm sure you know about called the Transition Integrity Project.
Oh, yeah.
And it's a group of Biden supporters, hard Democrats and leftists, but graybeards in the Democratic Party, and then also a bunch of Republicans who are never Trumpers who hate the president also. So they're almost all Biden supporters. And they ran through what they called war games about the election. And they had John Podesta play Joe Biden. Now, John Podesta, as you know, was Bill Clinton's chief of staff. He was Hillary Clinton's campaign chairman. So Podesta is a respected figure in the Democratic Party. He played Joe Biden in the scenario that they labeled clear Trump victory, so clear win. What Podesta playing Biden did was challenge the outcome of the election, get Democratic states to send electors who voted for Biden, even though the people in the states didn't vote for Biden. And actually, in this scenario, they had 3 states, California, Oregon, and Washington, try to secede from the country. We could be facing real chaos, and it's why we need a 9-justice Supreme Court.
I agree with you. In fact, I have a special tonight going through those actual transcripts to show the American people these are radicals that will not accept no for an answer. Ted Cruz, thank you very much. Ted Cruz, his new book is out today. It is One Vote Away, How a Single Supreme Court Seat Can Change History. A lot of behind the scenes. Ted Cruz.